Urgent alert, the Deathworlder fleet is mobilizing. HFY, HFY Reddit stories. The message came through the emergency channels late at night, its red flashing indicator cutting through the silence of the command center. Urgent alert, the Deathworlder fleet is mobilizing. Commander Alex Brandt stood frozen, staring at the message on her terminal. The words seemed almost surreal, an impossible threat, a thing of rumors and hushed warnings. For years, the Deathworlders had been a topic of idle speculation, a distant fear whispered in dark corners of the galaxy. No one truly believed the tales of their brutality or the sheer force of their warriors, until now. The Deathworlders, known for their unyielding survival instincts, incredible resilience, and terrifying ferocity in battle, were a race that thrived on chaos. It was said that they had once been scattered across a hostile, primitive planet, struggling to survive against constant predators and environmental hazards. But over time, they had become something much more: hunters, warriors, and conquerors. They had been dormant for so long that many had assumed they were a myth, yet here was proof, transmitted across every channel in every system: the fleet was moving. Alex took a breath and began the procedure. The military had prepared for this moment, but no one had expected it to come so soon. "Alert the Council," she barked to her subordinates, voice tight with urgency. "Activate the fleet readiness protocol. We need all hands on deck, now." "Yes, ma'am," came the immediate reply. She could already hear the sounds of frantic activity outside her office, officers shouting commands, technicians running to their stations, the hum of powerful engines firing up across the military base. The Deathworlders weren't just a threat, they were a force of nature, born of unrelenting struggle and evolution. They had conquered their own homeworld through sheer will, becoming the apex predators of their galaxy. Now, they had set their sights on the larger galaxy beyond. The transmission continued, each word heavy with gravity. It was a briefing sent by a scout ship that had barely escaped the advancing fleet. The Deathworlders had developed advanced technology, surpassing many of their neighboring systems in terms of military prowess. But what made them terrifying wasn't just their weapons or ships, it was their culture. They saw themselves as the ultimate species. To them, weakness was anathema, and any form of mercy was considered a flaw. Their warriors were fierce, trained from birth to fight and survive, and they had no patience for diplomacy. The only language they understood was strength. As Alex watched the transmission, a cold chill ran down her spine. There was no time to lose. The galaxy had to unite. If it didn't, the Deathworlders would tear through every system, one after another, until there was nothing left. But the Council's response was slow, too slow. "Commander," came a voice from behind her, "we've got a fleet of ours assembling, but the neighboring sectors are still on high alert. They're not sure if they can commit their forces without confirmation of the Deathworlders' intentions." Alex spun around, her mind racing. The problem wasn't just the Deathworlders themselves, it was the fractured nature of the galactic defense. The galaxy had never been united. Too many species had their own interests, their own agendas, and had resisted attempts at cooperation. Now, with a fleet of Deathworlders bearing down on them, the clock was ticking. "Tell them they don't have a choice," Alex said, her voice hard as steel. "The Deathworlders don't come with demands, they come with destruction. We either stand together, or we all fall." The room fell silent as her words sunk in. This wasn't a battle of negotiation, this wasn't a chance for diplomacy, this was war. The Deathworlder fleet wasn't like any other enemy they had faced. Their ships were designed not just for speed, but for efficiency in battle. They weren't just attacking, they were coming for total annihilation, a relentless onslaught that would leave no room for mercy or retreat. As the final confirmation came through, Alex felt a surge of cold fury. The universe was about to learn the true meaning of the term Deathworlder. The battle began the moment the fleet entered the system. As the first wave of Deathworlder ships breached the outer defenses, the Allied forces rallied with all the strength they could muster. Massive space battles erupted across the stars, laser cannons, plasma fire, and antimatter missiles streaked across the darkness like a violent storm. Yet, even with all their might, the Deathworlders proved to be a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. Their ships were maneuvering with a fluid precision, their tactics were brutal yet effective, and their warriors, those on the front lines, fought with the same unyielding fury that had made them legends. But the universe had a secret weapon of its own: the humans. Humanity, thought to be weak and scattered, had a unique advantage, a fire that burned brighter than any other race. Humans had faced insurmountable odds throughout their history: extinction, war, famine, and they had overcome them all. It was that resilience, that refusal to bend, that made them a force to be reckoned with. Human fleets were among the first to engage the Deathworlders in direct combat, and their soldiers, infantry, marines, and space warriors, fought with a ferocity that matched the Deathworlders in every way. For the first time, the Deathworlders had met an adversary that not only survived their onslaught but fought back with equal determination. "Hold the line," Alex shouted, her voice booming over the calms. "We're not just defending our homes, we're defending the entire galaxy. Don't let them take it from us." As the battles raged on, something unexpected began to happen. The Deathworlders, who had expected an easy conquest, began to falter. The ferocity of humanity's counterattack caught them off guard. What was supposed to be an overwhelming sweep turned into a brutal and drawn-out conflict. The Deathworlders were used to being the predators, but they were now being hunted. And as each Deathworlder ship fell, the message was clear: the galaxy might not be as fragile as they had thought. There were those who were willing to fight to the death, who would not bow to their cruelty. The Deathworlders' fleet was mobilizing, but so was a coalition of species that had found their strength in unity. Urgent alert: the Deathworlder fleet is mobilizing. HFY Reddit Stories Part 2. The battle had raged for days, the constant hum of battle giving way to silence only when one side fell. Commander Alex Brandt sat in the war room, surrounded by holographic projections of the front lines, trying to map out the next step. The Deathworlder fleet, relentless in its assault, had begun to fracture the defenses of the Allied forces, but it hadn't broken them yet. Humanity's resilience had become the rallying cry, and now, Alex was seeing the fruits of that resolve. On the battlefield, the Deathworlders had underestimated the cunning and unpredictability of human tactics. For every ship they destroyed, another one seemed to appear, drawn from reserves that had been kept hidden, just in case. The other galactic species, once hesitant, had finally committed their forces, and the tide of battle was beginning to turn, but no one could afford to relax. The Deathworlders didn't give up, they adapted. Alex's eyes narrowed as the holographic display flickered, indicating an incoming transmission. The message was from a frontline commander, Lieutenant Kara Nolan, one of the best strategists humanity had to offer. "Commander Brandt, this is Nolan. We've encountered something new from the Deathworlders. Their fleet's taking an unorthodox approach. They've split into smaller groups, each operating autonomously. They're attacking in waves, each group using guerrilla tactics we weren't prepared for. We need reinforcements, and we need them now. If we don't regroup, they'll pick us apart, one section at a time." Alex clenched her fist, her mind racing. The Deathworlders had already proven they were capable of overwhelming force, but now, they were showing a flexibility and adaptability that the human and allied fleets hadn't anticipated. This wasn't just about strength anymore, it was about their ability to evolve, to become more dangerous with every engagement. "They're learning from us," Alex muttered, more to herself than anyone else in the room. "We need to fight smarter, not just harder." Across the galaxy, a similar realization was dawning on others. The Deathworlders had been an enigma, a myth, a legend, something to fear in whispered tones, but now that myth was proving to be far more dangerous than anyone had imagined, and they weren't just coming for territory, they were coming to prove their dominance, to stamp their way of life into the fabric of the galaxy. Alex turned to her command team. "We need to get the coalition to adapt, we need faster response times, decentralized command, and we need those guerrilla tactics in play before the Deathworlders adapt further. Get our fleet ready to move, and send out the call to the other species. We can't lose this momentum. The Deathworlders are only going to get more unpredictable from here on out." The team scattered, sending commands to the various fleets and sending out urgent communications to the Council. The united front they had built was the only thing holding the galaxy together, but it was a fragile unity. Every minute of hesitation pushed them closer to being outgunned. Meanwhile, on the front lines, the Deathworlder strategy had already begun to bear fruit. Lieutenant Nolan's forces had been surrounded, the once strong defenses now reduced to scattered pockets of resistance. The Deathworlder ships weren't just attacking, they were systematically isolating their prey, cutting off escape routes, trapping ships in what seemed like an endless web. But humanity, ever adaptable, had something the Deathworlders hadn't counted on, an instinct for survival that ran deeper than strategy. It wasn't just about fighting back, it was about adapting, thinking on the fly, and changing tactics faster than the enemy could keep up. Nolan's voice came through again, crackling over the comms. "Commander, we're not out of this yet. The Deathworlders have us cornered, but we've got one last play. We're going to use their own tactic against them. If we can pull it off, we might just get the upper hand." "What do you have in mind, Lieutenant?" Alex asked, her attention fixed on the screen. "We're going to split our forces. We'll let them think they've got us boxed in, and then we'll launch simultaneous strikes on their command ships. They've been controlling the battle from a distance, but they're not expecting us to infiltrate their ranks." Alex hesitated, a split-second decision weighing heavily on her. If they split their forces, they risked weakening their position, but if they didn't take this risk, they might lose everything. "Do it, keep me updated," she said. With a swift motion, she issued the order, and across the galaxy, the Allied fleets shifted into position. The Deathworlders might be formidable, but they were not invincible. Humanity's ingenuity had always been its greatest weapon, and now was the time to unleash it. The final showdown came soon after. The two fleets, humanity and the Deathworlders, met in a wide-open sector of space, the silence of the void shattered by the roar of battle. It wasn't just ships firing at each other anymore, it was an entire war of tactics, deception, and precision. Humanity's forces, split but not broken, struck from multiple angles, confusing the Deathworlders. Every time they adapted to one attack, another would come from a different direction, overwhelming them. It was a test of endurance, intelligence, and sheer willpower. And just when it seemed the Deathworlders were starting to adjust, Lieutenant Nolan's forces made their move. Their infiltrator ships slipped past the Deathworlder lines, unnoticed, slipping into the heart of the fleet. There, they struck hard, targeting the command ships, taking down the fleet's central coordination system. The Deathworlders had no way of knowing what hit them. For the first time in this war, the Deathworlders were confused, disoriented, their ships faltered, their tactics began to break down. It was in this moment of chaos that the Allied fleets pressed the advantage, focusing all their fire on the weakened command structure. Slowly, the Deathworlder fleet began to fall apart. And then came the call. "Victory," came the voice through Alex's comms. "The Deathworlder fleet has been neutralized." But Commander Alex Brand knew the truth. This battle was just the beginning. The Deathworlders weren't gone. They would rebuild, adapt, and fight again. Urgent alert, the Deathworlder fleet is mobilizing. HFY Reddit Stories Part 3. The victory against the Deathworlders had come at a cost. Though humanity and the allied species had successfully repelled the Deathworlder fleet, the battle had left its mark. The galaxy was now in a state of wary peace, an uneasy calm that stretched across star systems. Knowing full well that the Deathworlders weren't finished, they were simply regrouping. Commander Alex Brand sat in the war room, the soft hum of machinery the only sound in the room. The holographic maps flickered in front of her, showing the locations of the remaining Deathworlder fleets, now scattered and disorganized. It was a momentary respite, a chance to recover, reorganize, and plan their next move. But Alex couldn't afford to relax. The Deathworlders had learned from their defeat. They were already adapting, and there were whispers that their next move would be unlike anything they had attempted before. Across the galaxy, messages of victory had been broadcasted, a propaganda victory that united the coalition of species in celebration. But Alex knew the truth: the Deathworlders would return, and next time, they would come with greater force and even more brutal strategies. Humanity, however, had proven itself. The Deathworlders had underestimated the determination and adaptability of the species. And now, the entire galaxy knew that humans, once seen as fragile, primitive beings, were not only capable of survival, but of leading the charge in a galaxy-spanning war. The door to the war room slid open, and Lieutenant Kara Nolan entered. Her uniform was scuffed and worn, her face marked by exhaustion, but her eyes still burned with the same fire that had kept her going through the worst of the conflict. "Commander," Nolan began, her voice steady but urgent. "We've intercepted new transmissions from the Deathworlders. They're regrouping, faster than we anticipated. And they've acquired something. Something we haven't seen before. Alex straightened, her heart rate quickening. What are they up to? Nolan held up a data pad, displaying a series of encrypted files. They've captured one of our ships, an experimental stealth ship. It was designed for reconnaissance, equipped with new cloaking technology. The Deathworlders have reverse-engineered it, and now they're using it to infiltrate our ranks. Alex clenched her jaw. The news was worse than she'd feared. If the Deathworlders had mastered the ability to cloak their ships, it would put their entire strategy at risk. Their fleet, once visible and predictable, would now be an unseen force, capable of striking anywhere at any time. They're learning faster than we can, Alex muttered under her breath. She turned to Nolan. We need to move quickly. Get the fleet ready. We can't let them turn the tide again. The situation was dire, but humanity had something the Deathworlders would never understand, an instinct for survival that was more than just brute strength. It was creativity, innovation, and the ability to adapt at an unimaginable pace. In response to the threat of cloaked ships, humanity's top engineers and scientists worked day and night to develop a countermeasure. The answer came in the form of a new type of sensor, one that could detect even the smallest fluctuations in energy fields caused by cloaking devices. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best they had, and it might just give them the edge they needed. Commander Brandt stood before the newly completed fleet of advanced ships, their sensors activated, ready to take on the invisible enemy. The most elite units were prepared to face whatever the Deathworlders threw at them next. We've got one shot at this, Alex said to her team, her voice cutting through the tension in the room. We need to strike before the Deathworlders figure out what we're doing. Their next move is their most dangerous yet. As she turned to the holographic map once again, she noticed something odd. A small, flashing signal, a faint blip in the vastness of space. At first, it seemed insignificant, but then the signal grew stronger. It wasn't just one ship, it was an entire fleet. And then, the transmission came through. We know what you've been doing, humans. The voice was cold, robotic, and filled with an unnerving calm. You think you've won? We were merely testing you. Now we've learned all we need to know. You will regret this, humans. The galaxy will belong to the Deathworlders. You have only delayed the inevitable. Alex's stomach dropped. The Deathworlders were no longer simply reacting, they were strategizing, planning. They had used their defeat to refine their tactics, and now they were preparing for a final, devastating strike. The galaxy was not yet safe. But Alex would not allow the Deathworlders to crush the spirit of humanity or their allies. Activate the countermeasures, she ordered. Get our ships into position. We have one chance to stop them before they escalate this war beyond our control. The next few days were a blur of preparation and calculation. The countermeasures were ready, the fleet in position, and the allied species, though hesitant, had agreed to fight alongside humanity once more. The Deathworlders might be a force of nature, but humanity had proven that even the deadliest predators could be outwitted. In the cold expanse of space, the two fleets faced each other again. The Deathworlders had massed their ships in an impressive formation, and for a moment, it seemed as though the galaxy was on the brink of destruction. But humanity was ready. Using their newly developed sensor arrays, they detected the cloaked ships almost immediately, pinpointing the Deathworlders' hidden strike force. It was a cat-and-mouse game now, one that would determine the fate of the galaxy. Commander Brandt's voice rang out across the comms. All ships, deploy in defensive formation. We know where they are. It's time to end this. The battle that ensued was brutal, a clash of titans that shook the stars themselves. But in the end, humanity's tenacity prevailed. The Deathworlder fleet, unable to adapt quickly enough to humanity's tactics and technology, began to crumble under the pressure. The Deathworlders might never be truly defeated. They were too relentless, too adaptable. But humanity had proven one undeniable truth: no matter how powerful the predators, they could not extinguish the light of a species willing to fight for their survival.